You were working at the FDA. Before being hired by the FDA, you worked as an attorney for Monsanto during 7 years, didn't you?
Well, I was a partner in a law firm of which Monsanto was a client. And I worked on some Monsanto matters, yes.
And apparently, if I understood well what I read, the FDA created a new position for you, Deputy Commissioner for Policy?
Well,
because there was a special need at that time at the FDA because of the new GMOs?
It had nothing to do with GMOs. Nothing at all to do with GMOs. I wasn't the author of these policies, but that's just false.
He moved over to the FDA in July of 1991. Up until that time, he was at a law firm called King & Spalding. His personal clients included not only Monsanto, but the International Food Biotechnology Council. And he had drafted for them a proposal for how they would like to see genetically engineered foods regulated. And if you look at the proposal that was written for IFBC, that was Michael Taylor's, with the final one that was published, it looks very, very similar. So if he didn't write it, it looks like somebody took what he wrote and changed it slightly for the policy.
Mr. Taylor was the deputy commissioner at the time, and he provided the leadership for the project.
And if you remember, this is the same Obama that said he wasn't going to hire any lobbyists or any government insiders, which, of course, we know he's done exactly the opposite. And even back in 2010, Obama gives key agriculture post to Monsanto man. Today, President Obama announced that he will recess appoint. Notice he was doing this back in 2010, not just last year. He appointed Islam A. Sequidi to the position of Chief Agricultural Negotiator, the Office of U.S. Trade Representative. Sequidi is a pesticide lobbyist and Vice President for Science and Regulatory Affairs at CropLife America, an agribusiness lobbying group that represents, guess who? Monsanto. So as you can see, Monsanto is making their way into every facet of government, especially when it comes into overlooking food safety. And how is it? How are they able to do that? Well, let's look at their lobbying track over the past few years. We go to another Natural News article. Monsanto spends a whopping $2 million in the third quarter of 2011 lobbying the federal government. Later on in the article, they source OpenSecrets.org. And let's just look and see how much money they've given over the past few years. $5.1 million in 2011. In 2010, they spent over $8 million. And in 2009, $8.6 million. These are all for lobbying. But their largest year was 2008, when it spent only $9 million bribing the federal government to betray the American people. But look, this isn't just Obama. This isn't just the Democrats. Back in the days of good old George W., remember Dan Quayle, Vice President? And I'm going to read along. You can go to the Seeds of Deception, page 130. First full paragraph. The biotech industry's success with these government leaders became apparent in May 26, 1992 at the Indian Treaty Room of the old Executive Building. There, Vice President Dan Quayle announced the Bush administration's new policy on genetically engineered food. And he said, I quote, "The reforms we announced today will speed up and simplify the process of bringing better agricultural products developed through biotech to consumers, food processors, and farmers. We will ensure that biotech products receive the same oversight as other products instead of being hampered by unnecessary regulation." There it is, Seeds of Deception. You can get the book also at INFOWARS.com. I would say check it out. It's a great book, especially when it talks about the gene gun and how they actually, the process of making these genetically engineered foods. They fire genes into other genes and see what sticks. I mean, I don't know if you could call that science, but they call it science, and they spend a lot of money on it. And obviously we know it's for your health because they do lots of studies to check and see how these things react with you. Oh, that's right, they don't. What they do is go after the scientists who are doing those studies and ruin their lives, which you could see in Scientists Under Attack. Our food supply should be kept local. It shouldn't be big agribusiness. We did that experiment since the 1920s. We've been doing that experiment, and it hasn't worked. And we see that. We've depleted our soils. We're creating crappy food. We're creating giant farms, animals being packed in, and we know this doesn't work. We know there are alternatives, and we know it's about keeping it local. But they don't want the food supply to be kept local. People like Monsanto want to be in control of this so they can control your very lives. But we're not done with Monsanto yet. It seems they've come out with a new sweetener, just like aspartame, but it's called neotame. New neurotoxic sweetener, FDA says no label needed, not even in organics. A Monsanto-created chemical, neotame, is likely more toxic than aspartame. The FDA has quietly decided that we don't even have the right to know if it's adulterating our food, even if it's been labeled organic. Let's go to the next quote. Up to this time, neotame hasn't been sold to the public, but that hasn't been necessary. It's been used widely in prepared foods. So the less awareness the less public has, the less likely it is that the public will try to avoid it. For the most part, that technique has worked. For now, very quietly, the FDA has decided that the public shouldn't be informed when neotame is included in any product, even organic products, which are supposed to be unadulterated with the chemicals and are not required to state when neotame is added. So there you go. Of course, this article from the group Gaia Earth, they do offer a solution. Their solution is very simple. If you want to avoid foods adulterated with neotame, then grow them yourself. That's basically what they say. So that's one of your only choices, or join a food co-op or keep it local, as they say. Moving on to another glorious topic of HPV vaccines. This comes from Kurt Linderman Sr., who writes articles from time to time, has been a guest on this show. HPV Vaccine Victims Advocacy Group sends open letter to HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius. She was the former governor of Kansas. And in it, the group is called SaneVax. You can find out more about them at sanevax.org. They state that these studies, 2.6 to 6.2 more HPV vaccinated young women experienced other high risks HPV infections than unvaccinated women. And when one considers the drastic number of adverse reactions and the lack of proof of any post-marketing studies showing for success of the vaccines, and outcry from patients regarding draconian measures from governments to force girls and now boys to get vaccinated, Secretary Sebelius, the HHS, and the FDA should immediately stop the HPV vaccine recommendations and forcibly remove the product from market. This is a very, very strong cry, and I'd like to commend SaneVax for making this. By the way, it states that there's been over 24,000 documented adverse reactions to this vaccine, over 3,000 very serious. But wait, the National Vaccine Information Center claims that less than 10% of adverse reactions are actually reported. So this number is probably a lot higher than what is stated in this article. And this is very, very sad that a lot of women out there, a lot of our young women, are being told this is for their protection, and it ends up hurting them really badly. Moving on to the economy. Ben Bernanke, this is out of USA Today, urges caution in overly rapid deficit cutting. And we also have a clip from him. But Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke defended the central bank's decision to hold interest rates at record low levels so they could keep giving lots of free money to the banks so then they could lend it to you at higher interest rates, thereby making a profit while you pay out the nose. And for the next 3 years, during a contentious hearing Thursday before federal lawmakers. Let's go to the clip.
Moreover, this sluggish expansion has left the economy vulnerable to shocks. Indeed, last year, supply chain disruptions stemming from the earthquake in Japan, a surge in the prices of oil and other commodities, and spillovers from the European debt crisis risk derailing the recovery. The outlook remains uncertain, however, and close monitoring of economic developments will remain necessary.
We had Bob Chapman on today's radio show, and he explained that this is probably going to actually create growth in the government, maybe 2%, or it's going to be kind of sideways growth, which really means no growth at all, instead of the negative 2% they were expecting. And this is because they're just printing more money, and pretty soon QE3 is going to happen, and you know, we're going to lead up to this next bubble that'll then crash, and the cycle will repeat itself until people decide to end the Fed. Moving on to the United Nations. UN wants a world tax to help the poor. And this has come from Deputy Director of United Nations Development Program, Jens Wandel. States he wants a minimal financial tax of 0.005% that will create $40 billion in revenue. And let me tell you, it's going to take a lot more than $40 billion in revenue to feed the poor with what he describes as people getting free housing, education, and health care. And what kind of free housing, education, and health care will you be getting? Will it be that you have to worship the UN? Will it be that you have to get a microchip in order to get this? I wonder how they're going to implement this type of program and then track all the people doing it. We know how they're going to do it. We know it has to do with microchips, and we know it has to do with forcing people onto vaccines, and it has nothing to do with creating this free utopia that this article states that they're going to do. And obviously, Paul Joseph Watson knows that that's not what they want to do. It's just another case of the UN stepping in and trying to remedy a problem that they actually helped create in the first place. And if you think that bureaucracy is going to do anything with that money other than steal it for themselves, you got another thing coming. Final article today. Fed sees over 300 websites on piracy charges. Federal agents charged with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's ICE, have seized hundreds of more websites and domain names in what is described as a piracy crackdown. And what are they doing? They're going after places selling NFL merchandise that isn't licensed. And the crackdown is part of a larger law enforcement initiative called Operation In Our Sights, which has seen a total of 669 domain names seized since its inception in 2010. And they're going to take this and use it for any reason to go after anybody. They're going to say, oh, wait, you played a clip that's registered to the federal government, so we're going to take your website down. Doesn't matter if you're a news site. Doesn't matter if you're involved in commentary or discussing our federal government seizing our rights and property in the process. They're going to use this. This is just a precursor. They're going to go after these guys, and you're like, yeah, go get them. They shouldn't be selling, pirated NFL merchandise. But that's not where it's going to stop. Believe me. It doesn't stop there. It stops at your blog, you posting your opinion. That's all we have today except our daily quote. Our quote of the day comes from Robert Heinlein. Very short, very sweet. Secrecy is the beginning of tyranny. Robert A. Heinlein. There you go. And there was a secret society speech that President Kennedy made just a few days before he was shot. It talks about secret societies and secret oaths are repugnant, especially to a free republic like ours. Coming up next, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, a bombshell interview with the one and only Fritz Springmeier. Alex is going to do an over 30-minute interview with him. If you like what you're seeing here and you're watching us on YouTube and you're not a member, please consider supporting us at PrisonPlanet.tv or InfoWarsNews.com. I think today is our last day to get 44% off the yearly special, and we also have a 10-day trial, or 15-day trial that you can try out. Give us a try, see if you like us. We're doing this every day of the week, and we're going to keep on doing it as long as the governments out there are causing problems for free-loving individuals like ourselves. With that, I'm Rob Dew. You can send me emails at robd@infowars.com, and Alex will be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Greetings, fellow Info Warriors. Alex Jones here, announcing the first of many trips that I'm going to take across this wonderful United States that we live in. Now, we get so busy here at InfoWars.com, the nightly news, the daily radio show, the documentary films, and all the other things we're doing that I tend to never go out and give speeches anymore. And I've got a lot of ideas bubbling around in my head about the history of the New World Order, what makes them tick and how to defeat them. So I'm titling this key speech I'm going to give. It'll run around 2 hours long, Blueprint to Defeat the New World Order. And we're also going to have a surprise premiere of a short documentary film we've been working on at the event. First off, I'm going to be going to Dallas, Texas, Sunday, February 19th, 2012, to the historic Lakewood Theater. And the next Sunday, February 26th, I'm going to be in Orlando, Florida. You can find out more about the events and buy tickets at Infowars.com/events. Now, unfortunately, every event I've ever had, we've had to turn people away. So get your tickets early at Infowars.com/events. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in